Hello friends, Sarah here, and welcome to my corner. Today I'll be working on some high-end DIY, so let's get started. I will begin by removing the stem from my pumpkin, and then I will take the stem from a floral pig that I removed the leaves and flowers from for a previous DIY and shape it into a new stem for my pumpkin, making the bottom where the wires are gathered together the top curly piece and the separated branches the base of my new stem. After cutting my new stem to fit, I will insert it into my pumpkin. Now that I've got my new stem established, I am going to paper mache over it. Now for my paper mache, I am just going to use newspaper and cut it into small strips. And then I am going to use my school glue and pour it directly into a bowl. Now, normally with paper mache, you would use a combination of glue and water. This is a washable school glue, so I don't want to use water. I just want to use the glue itself. This will help to give it a stronger, more plastic-like feel, which is what I am going for. Normally, I do prefer to use the non-washable school glue, and I do water that down a bit, and then it gives it a nice hard plasticky texture to it. So I am just dipping my newspaper strips into the glue and making sure that there is glue on the front and the back of my strip, and then wrapping it around my stem. I am focusing mainly on the bottom portion of my stem where I like it to be nice and thick, and then for the top portion of my stem I'm just wrapping a very light layer around. Now you can cut your strips a bit smaller for the top, it'll make it a lot easier to wrap, but I just work with the bigger strips here as I'm doing, using a little extra glue in order to make it easier to maneuver. And then once I am done and I like how my stem looks, I just leave it to dry. Now that my stem is all dry, I am just going to take a pair of small scissors and snip away all of the pieces of the paper that are sticking out. Now because we used glue, you can also use sandpaper and just sand away all of the edges poking out. Now I will be using my Waverly chalk acrylic paint in the color Steel to paint over the entire pumpkin, not including the stem. I am using the steel color because the thumbtacks that I will be using are the silver one. If you are using a different color of thumbtacks like gold or black, you'll want to use a matching paint color, because this is just to go on so that if there are any gaps between the thumbtacks, you won't be able to notice it as easily as if you just had the bright orange underneath. And so I am just painting the entire pumpkin. I will do 2 full coats just to ensure that there is no orange showing through. And then for the stem, I will actually be painting the stem a different color. So for these leaves, I am using the burlap leaves, but I do want them to be a bit smaller. So here I am just going to cut off the bottom section of the leaf so that it is smaller than the original size, just because the pumpkin itself is a bit smaller. And then again, because I'm using the silver thumbtacks, I just thought that black would be a very nice coordinating color, a bit of a contrast to the silver. And so I'm just using acrylic black paint and just using a brush to dab that directly into the burlap, and then I will be flipping it over just to make sure that the other side has absorbed plenty of the paint. Now you will need quite a bit of acrylic because it is burlap, so it's somewhat of a fabric and it does absorb the paint quite a bit. And then once I finish painting both of my leaves, front and back, I am going to use the same black acrylic paint to color the stem. And for the stem, you will need 2 coats because I want full coverage. The leaves, however, I am only doing 1 coat on each side because, again, it absorbs it so strongly that 2 coats will not be necessary to get that full coverage on the leaves. So now that my pumpkin has had enough time to dry and I have done 2 coats, I am going to begin pushing my thumbtacks into the pumpkin. Now, to begin, I like to start where the indents are on the pumpkin just to ensure that you will be able to see that it is in fact a pumpkin and not just a round ball. So now that I have all of my indents filled with my thumbtacks, I will begin to fill in the in between, the more sticking out part of the pumpkin. And so some of the thumbtacks, once they go in, they are a bit wiggly. And so for those, I do like to use a bit of hot glue to just ensure that they will stay put. And then for the thumbtacks that are more towards the center, those are the ones that are overlapping the most. So on those, I do use hot glue on each one of the ones that go in the center, because if not, after a while, once you tap your pumpkin a few times, you will begin to lose some of the thumbtacks. So I just gone ahead and I continue to fill in the remainder of my pumpkin until it is all covered in the thumbtacks. Now for my pumpkin, it did take over 700 thumbtacks, and my Dollar Tree did not have the silver ones in stock when I went shopping. They do carry the silver ones, and it's usually 300 to a pack, but I ended up getting mine at Target, which was 100 to a pack, so I used quite a bit. And then here I had planned to just use the black burlap leaves, but it came across a bit Halloween. So I had these flowers from Dollar Tree, and so I thought perhaps if I put those in, it would look a little less Halloween. And it does add to it, but in the end, it does still look a bit Halloween. So I'm still very happy with it. It's beautiful and it's actually quite heavy. I was surprised at the weight, but it turned out gorgeous. So I am just in love with this piece and will definitely be using it for Halloween as well. So for my next DIY, I really liked the way that the thumbtack pumpkin came out, and so I had seen these beautiful push pins at Target and decided that I wanted to make something a bit more glam than that thumbtack pumpkin. So I have already created my stem using the same method I did for the thumbtack pumpkin, with the recycled stem and newspaper and glue, making the paper mache. I've let it dry and now I am just using some of that leftover glue from my paper mache, adding additional glue to it, and then I am taking my white chalk paint and adding that to the glue. Now, I do not have an exact measurement as to how many parts glue to how many parts paint. I sort of just make it a consistency that is paintable onto my pumpkin. And then once I get it where I like it, I do begin to paint this onto my pumpkin. Now, I do paint the stem as well as the pumpkin, and I give it a really nice thick coating of this glue chalk paint mixture. Now, the reason that I am adding the glue into the chalk paint is so that when I spray paint, because this is a foam pumpkin, the spray paint will not affect the foam. Normally, if you attempt to spray paint onto foam, it will sort of shrivel up and shrink. So the glue will create a barrier to prevent that from happening, and the white paint just works as a primer to really help my spray paint pop. I will be spray painting with a metallic rose gold because my push pins actually have a rose gold backing to them with clear beads. So here my pumpkin has been sprayed with 2 coats of the metallic spray paint. I am loving the rose gold color. And now here I'm just taking my decorative push pins, and this time I am actually starting from the top of the pumpkin. And for this one, I want it to appear as though I have all of these glass beads on the top of my pumpkin and they are just sort of cascading down the pumpkin. So I do my top layer going around first, and then I begin to work the push pins down in the crevices of the pumpkin. And so I do continue to just push each of the push pins in. And as I am going down, I'm allowing them to go to different lengths. I leave some gaps in between as well to make it look as though there's a bit of a drip and to not have it be so uniform and patterned all the way around. And for these push pins, I was a bit surprised. I believe that it has to do with the glue primer that I used, but none of these push pins needed any sort of hot glue to help hold them in place. They fit snugly into the foam. And really, I do believe that it was the primer that helps them to just stay put and not come out of the foam as the thumbtacks did. So I just continue this all the way around, and I am just, as I go, I'm just falling more and more in love with this pumpkin. So once I have completed pushing in all of the push pins, I do like the way that the pumpkin looks. However, I decided that I wanted to add a bit of a highlight to the stem. So I take my Folk Art metallic pearl white acrylic paint and I just dry brush that on directly to the stem of the pumpkin. And I really like the highlight it gives. Initially, I intended to use these golden leaves that I got off of a garland from Dollar Tree, but I decided instead I really like the look of the florals on the thumbtack pumpkin, so I wanted to add those to this one as well. And that's my daughter's hand right there. She decided to play around with the florals. And so I just used my Cricut weeding tool to poke a hole into the pumpkin into the foam and then pushed the stem of the floral down into the foam. And then I do use a bit of hot glue just to secure those in place. And I really do like how it comes out in the end. We have a bit of a competition in my house whether the thumbtack pumpkin is better or the push pin. You'll need to let me know down in the comments below which one you would prefer, but I am on the fence. I'm kind of loving both of them equally. So, before I begin my next DIY, I would like to ask if you have enjoyed my DIYs, if you could please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button to be notified when I upload so that you can see all of my upcoming DIYs. And now let's go on ahead and get started with the next DIY I've got planned. So to begin, I am going to be using this adorable house-shaped chalkboard easel that I found at Target's Dollar Spot for just $3. Now, if your Target Dollar Spot does not have these, then you could always use the chalkboard easels that they have at the Dollar Tree. I've seen them there quite often in their crafting section, and they would work just as well, and I think it would turn out just as cute. And so to start, I am going to be using some painter's tape because I don't want that wooden frame. Now, if you wanted to, if you do like more of the farmhouse theme or the farmhouse aesthetic, you could just use like a wood stain and stain the wood to your preferences, but I prefer to not have that wood color. I don't have much in my home that is wood colored, so I am going to use my Waverly chalk acrylic paint in the color Crystal to paint over the frame and give it a nice light blue color. So I am just going to apply the one coat of the chalk acrylic paint because it does give quite nice coverage. And so I'm going to set that to the side. And I painted my hand quite a bit there, but I'm going to use this scrap paper that I used for a different project, and I am just measuring it out, and now I am going to press it down onto the larger pumpkin at the bottom so that I can leave an imprint so that I know where to cut. So here you can see how it imprinted on the paper, and so I am just going to cut that stencil or that piece out so that I will be able to attach it to the back. And so I'm just making sure that it fits nicely and is ready for me to Mod Podge it on. Now, when I apply the Mod Podge, which I am using the gloss, they do have two different kinds. One's a matte, the other one is a gloss. I do want a gloss because I want it to look like it is behind glass. And so I am applying the Mod Podge very liberally to the front of my scrap paper and then to the back of my little sun catcher. I do use quite a bit of the Mod Podge in order to get it on there. The front of my scrap paper is textured, and so I just push that against there, and any of the Mod Podge that has seeped out of the side, I just use a paper towel to go on ahead and clean that up. And then because I do use quite a bit, it does turn out looking a bit foggy until it does dry clear. And so for my top pumpkin, I did want to give it that nice pearly white. So this is a metallic pearl white acrylic paint. And again, I am painting it to the back of the sun catcher because I want it to look as though it is glass. And then here, as you can see, my camera is still broken. I honestly don't even know where to take it to fix it. It's the little screen that broke, but I'm still using my phone to film. And here I am just taking some brown acrylic paint, and I am using the tool that came with the sun catcher kit from the Dollar Tree to put the brown paint into the stem, and that I am doing on the front of the pumpkin. And here I am just removing all of my painter's tape and then seeing where I want my decal. And I just printed this decal using my Cricut, and I am just I'm a very perfectionist kind of person. I need it centered and I need it just in the perfect place. So it does take me a bit of time to find exactly where that is. And then I just go on ahead and I scrape down all of my letters with my Cricut scraper, and then I go on ahead and make sure those are nice and down, and then I go on ahead and use my hot glue gun to attach my sun catcher. Now my pumpkin was still cloudy for 2 days, but it did clear up and it looks, I love it. I think it looks exactly how what I wanted. It looks as though it is on glass, and I am definitely ready to say so long to summer and welcome to autumn. So for the next DIY, I will be using a metal wreath ring that I got at Joann's, and I believe I paid under $3 using a coupon. But you could also use a Dollar Tree wreath form and just cut around the edges so that you just have that ring. So now I am going to take my foam pumpkin and I will be using a Dollar Tree steak knife to cut the pumpkin in half, and I am cutting it in half down the middle of the pumpkin to ensure that I get that complete half pumpkin onto my wreath. And then once I do get it cut down, I am going to paint it with 3 coats of my dark blue midnight acrylic paint. That footage was lost, as well as the footage of me attaching the 2 floral stems and the pumpkin to the wreath, I just did that using some floral wire and then also using hot glue to ensure that it is really attached on there nicely. And then I decided that I wanted to fill the space a bit more, so I have these lamb's ear from Walmart, and there's 2 picks for $2. And then I am just going to use a liberal amount of hot glue once I get them positioned where I like them, and I'm just applying them mainly to the back of the pumpkin. Now, if you can see in the video, for the back of the pumpkin, I did use a bit of scrap fabric that I cut out to fit the back of the pumpkin because I did not want that styrofoam to come apart and fall all over the place. This wreath will be going on my pantry door, and so I will also cover the back of the floral stems of the lamb's ear with another bit of scrap fabric just to ensure that it does not stick or scratch my pantry door. And I just use hot glue to attach that scrap fabric on there. And then I just make sure that it's nice and all the sides are stuck down. And then I go on ahead and I flip it over to see how I like it. I do feel like it still looks a bit sparse. I mean, it does look nice, and it is what I envisioned for my pantry. I don't like anything too elaborate in my kitchen, so I do like it, but I just felt it was missing something, and I do have a lot of florals from the Dollar Tree, so I did decide to go on ahead and take a couple of flowers off of the stems and apply those where I thought that it was looking a bit bare, which was along each side of the pumpkin. And I just used hot glue to apply those. So I put a lot of hot glue onto the back of the flower stem and then just kind of wiggled it between the leaves and the wire to get it to stick into place and not worry about it falling, because my pantry door, I have a teenager and a young daughter, and with the two of them, that door is open and closed at all times, so it needs to withstand the constant swinging. And so for the next thing that I will be doing to the wreath, I thought that the metal signs that they have in the Dollar Tree would be perfect for this. Now, I like to sort of have an asymmetrical look at times. Usually I'm very symmetrical and I like my even numbers, but here I thought to put it on the side, it would just look really cute. And I will be using E6000 because, again, the door will be open and close, and I want to make sure that it will stay put. And hot glue just is not going to do that when you are hot gluing metal to metal. It does not have a very strong hold. So I know with the E6000, it will hold for a good long time. And so here I just put it where it's going to go. I'll glue it down later. And then I just use painter's tape. And so here you see me, I'm making a sash out of just some plain black ribbon where it will be used as the hanger. And I am just hot gluing that ribbon around to get it on there. And then here it is on my pantry door, and I love it. It's very simplistic. And the harvest, seeing as how all of the food is behind this door, I thought that just works out perfectly. So these are the supplies you'll be needing for the next DIY. It's a very simple DIY if you know how to do a very simple 3-strand braid. And you'll also need some hot glue as well as a couple of leaves to embellish. Before I begin this DIY, I did just want to show you this pumpkin that I got at Joann's last year, and it inspired this DIY. Now, to begin the DIY, I am first removing the stem. Then I am using my scissors just to puncture or indent the foam on the pumpkin so that I will be able to push down some of the strands or braids. And then I am just taking my cotton twine and I am going to glue using hot glue. I'm going to glue down one strand going down each of the crevices of the pumpkin. And then now here my pumpkin is all done with the one strands of the cotton twine. And now I am going to take 6 strands of cotton twine and I am just going to do a basic 3-strand braid using 2 strands for each strand, if that makes sense. And so you're just doubling up, but you are still doing your basic 3-strand braid. Um, and so then this is what it looks like in the end. As you can see, it's a 3-strand. And then those are going to be used for the interior of, or well, it's still going in the crevice of the pumpkin. It is just going next to the one strands. So I call it the interior because the bigger braids will go on the exterior. So the piece that protrudes most out on the pumpkin. And so I do go on ahead and I push the braid into the hole or the crevice that we made at the very top. Now it is a foam pumpkin. It is not hollow on the inside. So this does get more difficult as I am going around the pumpkin, but I just go on ahead and continue to jam it in there. And as you can see, I am using a full strand of hot glue to glue it in place where I want it. And then I am also going to sort of push down on the braid to open it up a bit as it is going down so that it does lay a bit flatter. And then another thing, just to make it look more high end, when you see knitted fabric or just knitwear, the V shape in the knit, they do alternate directions. So with this, the way that I am doing it is these braids, I am making sure that all of the V shapes are actually going in the same direction so that when I apply the larger braids, I will put those so that the V shapes are going in the opposite direction. So here you can see my pumpkin is covered and I am completed doing the smaller braids. And as you can see, there are bigger sections left open. And now this is where the bigger braids will come in. And so in order to make the bigger braids, it's again just a simple 3-strand braid. However, I will be using the braids that I had made previously. So these are the braids that I made using 6 strands of the cotton twine. And then I am just going to take those and I am going to make a 3-strand braid out of them. And when I am doing my 3-strand braid, because these are thicker, I do want them to lay flat. So I am making sure that as I am braiding it, that I am pushing it down flat and that when I cross over, I'm not flipping. I am just crossing over entirely. Now, another thing that I did because I have OCD with directions and numbers and all of that. So when I am making this braid, I am ensuring that my V's on my braids are all in the same direction as I am doing the braid itself. And it just, like I said, I do have OCD and it does help me. Braiding like this is very calming, but again, I make sure that my V's are in the same direction. It really doesn't matter. If you look at it, you're not going to be able to tell unless you're just like really staring hard at these braids. But I go on ahead and I do that. I make these thicker stranded braids, and then those will fill the bigger gaps. And so, like the previous ones, I am going to glue them down using hot glue. And on these ones, the majority of them, I do not try to push them into that hole. I sort of just glue down as close as I can to the base while still trying to keep it a bit flat. And then I go on ahead and when I'm gluing down the strand on the actually like the side of the pumpkin, for that I do press out the braid. So here at the top where I'm applying the glue, I actually pull the braid a bit tighter, and then as I go towards the center, that's where I actually push the braids out a bit, because I'm trying to ensure that that braid is covering all of the white pumpkin. And then again, where it gets narrow, I pull tight on the braid while holding down the area that was a bit wider, just because I don't want to pull on that and pull that off. But I do go on ahead and I pull tight when I get to the narrower sections, and that ensures that the braid itself becomes a bit narrower in those areas. So now you can see that the pumpkin is all done and covered with the braids. And you can see here on the close-up how the V's are sort of alternating between one another. And then I decided that instead of using the plastic stem that came on the pumpkin, which I initially was going to, I thought that one of the wooden stems that you get in the pack at Dollar Tree would look a lot cuter. And I just take these leaves that are left over from floral stems that I've used and I haven't used the leaves, and apply those with hot glue along with the little wood stem, and my pumpkin is complete. And then here you can see what it looks like against the Joann's pumpkin. And so this is the pumpkin all the way done, and I just love it. It looks beautiful and it looks like a knitted pumpkin. So this last DIY is a bit of a bonus DIY because I did not include the photograph in my thumbnail, but hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. So to begin, I'm just going to take this detail wire brush from the automotive section in Dollar Tree. Be very careful because I stabbed my finger and it is quite painful, but I am just going to remove as much of the glitter from this leaf tea light candle holder as I can. This was the only tea light holder that I found in my Dollar Tree. And when I asked the associate about it, she said that she believes that it was a Christmas item that they just had in the back that they had never put out. And that's why she does not believe that it is actually for Thanksgiving or the fall holiday. She believes it's a Christmas holder. Now, here again, my phone was in portrait mode. I do apologize for that, but these steps are rather simple. So if you can't see, if you're watching this on your phone and it's rather small, it is pretty simple for me to just explain through just talking. And so what I'm doing is I am using E6000 on one of the long stem glass candle holders. You can use any size. They do come in tall, medium, and small. I am using one of the smaller ones. And so I am just applying the E6000 on the inside, and I'm applying quite a bit because I intend to flip it upside down and put it onto the leaf tea light candle holder. And then the E6000 will basically drip down and create that bond. Now on the leaf tea light candle holder, I am using hot glue just because I want to be able to spray paint this immediately, and I don't want to worry about it coming apart with the E6000 not sticking, not having that immediate hold. And so here I am just putting my long stem glass candle holder on the top and allowing the E6000 to drip down. And as it does that, it does flood out a bit. So I am going to use a paper towel just to clean up some of that E6000 that does flood out. And then once it is all clean, I will give it 2 coats of my metallic silver spray paint. So once the spray paint is all nice and dry, I am going to very gently fold back or curl the leaves on the leaf tea light candle holder. And I'm just going to do that to the bottom layer first, and then I am going to do the same to the top layer. Again, just being very gentle and very careful as to not break the leaves off. And then once I like the way it looks, I am going to take my frosted votive holder and just see how it fits, make sure that the leaves are not in the way. And then in order to attach it, I'm actually going to remove the sticker on the bottom. And then I'm going to use E6000 to glue that down and glue it into place. So here's the completed DIY with a flameless tea light candle inside. Now, if you liked these DIYs, I would really appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up by hitting that like button. And until the next creative moment, bye bye.